Hey guys, this is Nick and welcome back to my Linux experiment. And this is a special video outside of the planned schedule because the channel just reached 100,000 subscribers. And to celebrate that, this is kind of a special video about myself, where I live, what I use, and a few questions that you guys asked me on the last video as I asked you to do. So let's begin. So let's start with where I live. I live in Brest, which is probably the most western city in France at the edge of Brittany. It is not the most beautiful city, since it has been completely razed during World War II, but it's a simple place, not too expensive, and the beach is never further than a 20-minute drive. I bought a flat there on the top floor of a small building. It's 82 square meters, I'll let you convert that in feet. So here we are, and right away you can see the kitchen that isn't finished. When I moved in it was completely made out of bricks and it looked horrible and it was super impractical. So I ended up redoing it, but with COVID, the drywall could only be completed last month and it still needs painting. I need to put something on this wall as well to avoid having too much water hit the wall, and it lacks two small cupboards about the stove to store a little bit more stuff. Now there's the bathroom, completely untouched from when I moved in. It's big, it looks okay, and there is plenty of light, so I can't really complain. Now my office is right there with my desk where I work from my day job when I'm working from home, and where I also record some videos and edit all of them. Now here on the floor we have three Slimbook laptops that I do need to review, and in the big black box underneath, another one for another video that will come this month. This is where the gear I use is also located, so we'll take a look at that when I'm done showing off my flat. Now we're on the living room with a nice dining table from IKEA and lots of light, thanks to the fact that I don't have a building sitting right in front of my window. On the other side we have the couch, always in bed mode because who wants to sit when you can lie down, and the TV with my Xbox One X and my Mega Drive, what you Americans would call a Genesis. The games are back there on the shelf. I don't play that often anymore, but I just love this console, so I'm keeping it there as a memento from when I was younger. So on this little corner we have the router and a few plants because, well, plants are cool. I need them to hide the router, which is super ugly, and also because I don't really know what else I could do with this space. Now here's the bedroom, pretty Spartan because I don't like having too much stuff in the way when I'm trying to sleep. I like to keep distractions to a minimum. And this stupid shutter doesn't close all the way down anymore, so I need to have it fixed at some point. And now my pride and joy, the veranda or patio. Patio? I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't even know how you call this kind of room in English. That's where I record some of my videos, that's where I read, where I host parties, well, where I would host parties if we still could, and also where I set up my old desktop as a backup PC. I can't record here all the time since the light is just too random in Brest, and it would create weird color shifts all across the videos. So I can only record there when I know it's going to be sunny for at least 30 minutes at a time, which is never guaranteed here. And that's it. Well, I have a bathroom, but I'm not showing you that. If you think I cleaned up the apartment, I didn't. I'm just a minimalist, so I don't own much stuff to begin with, so there isn't much stuff to lay around. Okay, so now let's move on to the gear I use to run the channel. So to record my videos, these days I use an iPhone 11, because I can't use a real DSLR or video camera, it's too expensive and it would take me ages to learn. And with the smartphone, I know how to use it, formats are easy to support and files are easy to transfer. I used to use my Galaxy S10e as well, but I sold it. My /E phone doesn't have such a great camera, so I'm not using it for that. I generally stick the phone on this Amazon Basics tripod, which works great for static shots, but is terrible if you're trying to pan, as the movement just isn't smooth at all. It's height adjustable and you can stick any sort of mount you want on top of it, so it's still pretty useful. And then there are the microphones. They are both the same, they are both Blue Yetis. The black one is on my desk for gaming, recording voiceovers for the podcast, and when I need to talk to other human beings. The grey one is on a mic mount for when I record my face to have good sound. I generally use them with the gain way down, and I try to stick it as close to my face as possible to ensure that it doesn't pick up too much echo. I generally plug this one into the computer located in the room I'm in. But to have correct lighting, I use these two softboxes. They were super cheap off of Amazon, like 70 euros for the both of them, I think. They can go super high or super low in terms of height, and they emit enough white light that only one is needed to light the office with the window closed. They're okay, they tend to have some amount of flicker after a while, but it's generally not really noticeable in the video. And that's it for the video and audio gear. Now to record screencasts, I use OBS, and audio is recorded through Audacity. There's nothing super fancy here, I just clean up the audio by removing background noise, and I use a compressor if the audio is too unbalanced in terms of peaks, but that's about the lot. Now to edit the videos, I use DaVinci Resolve. It's available for Linux, it's super easy to install and run, provided you have an NVIDIA graphics card using the proprietary NVIDIA drivers. If you have an AMD card, you can use the proprietary drivers as well, but I never tested that, so I don't know how well it works. I moved to Resolve just because no open source alternative can use GPU acceleration correctly. Some do, but they tend to crash a lot, and they are still more laggy and take more time than Resolve to render the video. When Kdenlive has hardware acceleration baked in, I probably move back to it, but in the meantime, it's Resolve. I moved to the paid studio version because codec support is abysmal in the free version on Linux, and I was tired of converting everything with FFmpeg. It's expensive, I think it's 250 euros, but the time I saved was well worth it, and it also unlocks a lot of effects. Now everything is edited on this lovely Slimbook desktop that I had for a month now, and it's a beast. It's a Ryzen 7 5800X with an RTX 3070, 32GB of RAM and a 2TB SSD. It's super fast, it's beautiful, and it's a fantastic workhorse. There will be a dedicated video about it very soon. It runs Manjaro KDE, and there will also be a video about it this month as I'm rediscovering Plasma and KDE, and I'm really enjoying it so far. My monitor is an LG 32-inch ultra-wide display with a 1440p resolution and a 100Hz refresh rate. It's lovely, it's super practical, and honestly going back to a 16:9 monitor, like the one I have in the veranda, feels like stepping back in time now. My speakers are just regular Logitech ones, pretty cheap. The lamp is from IKEA, it actually has a wireless charging pad on it, which is super nice. And my mouse is a Logitech MX Master 2S, I think. And the keyboard is just a regular Apple keyboard, but I also tend to use this other one, which is black that I just bought. If only the Bluetooth would work correctly on Manjaro, I would not have to switch keyboards all the time. It's just so annoying. And that's it for the gear I use daily. Apart from the computer and the monitor, there's nothing too expensive in here, and of course, sure, the quality of the videos I put out is not on the level of an AMKBHD or Jonathan Morrison, but honestly, I think I'm doing pretty well with what I have, and I didn't have to spend like thousands of dollars to get all that stuff together. So that's about it for the gear, and now let's move on to your questions. Okay, so the first question is, what is your low-key favorite distro and desktop environment? Which advanced project do you support and have been supporting and looking forward to for a long time? And apparently the answer has to be different than Elementor OS. It's not going to be different from Elementor OS. My favorite distro is Elementor OS, and my favorite desktop environment is Pantheon. These days I don't use it anymore because I'm waiting for the official release of Elementor OS 6, and because I want to spend more time using other desktop environments, so I'm not too biased when I do videos about stuff. I don't want to take stuff for granted or expect certain things to work in a certain way. So I'm trying to mix it up and switch desktop environments a little bit more frequently. But yeah, the project I support the most and that I love the most is Elementor OS, there is no doubt about that. It's, to my mind, and for my use case, the best distribution out there. Now another question is, what do you think about Garuda Linux? And I have no opinion, I have never used it, I don't really know how it's working. I think it's based on Arch, but I'm not even sure. All I've seen is that kind of super weird neon theme, kind of a cyberpunk look, and I can't say I'm a fan, but apart from that, I have no opinion, I've never used it. What do you think about the unorganized, non-systematic App Store problem of Linux? And I think it's not a problem. I think there is no App Store problem or disorganized problem, because honestly, a normal, regular user just doesn't give a crap about this. He opens the App Store, he finds application, he clicks install, and it's installed. The package system that is used, if it's a Debian package, an RPM package, a Flatpak, or a Snap, he doesn't care. The app is there, it launches when you click on it, and that's it. There is literally no problem for the user, for a normal, regular user. The only people who think it's a problem are advanced users who know about this stuff and would like to have their app available in a specific packaging format. But honestly, the advantages and disadvantages of each packaging format make no difference to a regular user. So I don't think it's really a problem. I think it's a problem if you're interested in it, but if you're not, there's no issue there. Okay, another question is, what is your favorite open source apps? What are my favorite open source apps? I'd say GIMP or Glimpse if you prefer using the non-weird named variant. This is a fantastic tool for editing my YouTube thumbnails, even though I'm terrible at it. It's a great tool. I love Planner, which is an open source to-do list client, which I think is amazing and probably one of the best apps I've used on Linux. LibreOffice also comes to mind, super amazing office suite. Kdenlive is pretty cool. I don't use it anymore because it lacks hardware acceleration, but honestly, as a video editor, it's probably one of the best open source ones available on Linux. What else is there? Well, Audacity, of course, because I use it. It's super powerful. It looks ugly as all hell, but it is very, very useful and very nice. And yeah, those are probably my favorite open source apps that I use all the time, literally every day. Well, not Kdenlive anymore, but yeah, these are my favorite open source apps. So another question is, what was the main reason to make you switch to the Linux side, and what distro would you absolutely recommend to a completely user? I think it's a completely new user. What was the main reason to make me switch to Linux? It was because I wanted my computer to look and feel like a Mac. I bought a super cheap, probably back in 2006 or 2007, I bought a super cheap ass Medion laptop, like it was a refurbished one, it was damaged, but it was extremely cheap. And the problem is it shipped with the Windows XP, which is a system at the time that I despised and that I still despise in terms of looks. It's just super ugly. And I wanted to configure it. So I looked for theme packs to make it look like a Mac, because at the time I was obsessed with Mac OS and I loved how it looked and felt. And yeah, so I decided to install theme packs. Obviously, what you think happened, which is I got viruses, my system was destroyed, and it wasn't even that close of an experience. So I started looking online and I found like screen caps of people who had managed to turn like something called Ubuntu into something that really looked like a Mac with a global menu and stuff like that, and was like, yeah, that's what I want. So I decided to install Linux, and in the end, I installed, I think, 6.06 Dapper Drake, which didn't work quite well with my Wi-Fi networks. Then I installed 6.10 Edgy Eft, which was nice as well, and I stick to that. And honestly, I tried to turn it into a Mac, but in the end, I preferred the brown and orange look and feel that it had at the time, and I stuck to that. And I've been using Linux ever since. There has been periods in my life where I haven't owned a computer, so I haven't used Linux. But as soon as I had another one, I generally installed Linux on it, even as a dual boot, because I've just been so interested in it, and I think it's just a fantastic system. So what distro would I absolutely recommend to a completely beginner? I'd say Ubuntu. Honestly, there is no real contest here. Some people might disagree, but Ubuntu has the most amount of online help. It is very stable if you pick the LTS release. It's super simple to use. It's looked and felt the same for ages, so you're not going to lose all your muscle memory if you keep using it years after years. It hasn't switched desktop environments that much. It's simple, it's easy to use, it doesn't look half bad, it has simple user-facing programs. I'd say go with Ubuntu. You're gonna find any answer that you're looking for on the internet. It's gonna be way easier for somebody beginning. So, other question, what Linux mail program do you use, if any? When I'm on Elementary OS, I use the Elementary OS default mail client. It lacks a few features, like the ability to create folders, and it tends to crash a bit when you have too complex like replies and answers and a long chain of replies. It tends to crash a little bit, but it's usable. When I'm on GNOME, I use Geary because it's probably one of the best email clients I've used on any systems period. And when I'm on KDE, I use Kmail, which is okay if you configure it a little bit so it looks less old and less cluttered. But yeah, basically those are the three mail clients I tend to use. They're fine. I haven't found a really amazing email client on Linux. Maybe Geary is what's closest, but on Elementary OS it looks like ass because, well, theme problems. Next question, what do you think the future on Linux gaming? Which manufacturer you think will support Linux gaming more, Nvidia or AMD? That's a good question. The future of Linux gaming is bright, I think. I think Linux gaming is picking up steam. That's a bad joke, but it's real. It's really moving forwards. Like probably something around 60% of the games that have been reported on ProtonDB run with gold or platinum rating, which means that you can just run them in one click without doing anything, basically. That's huge. In a few years, we've come from there are literally no games and you're gonna have to hustle with wine to make sure that stuff works, to basically one-click install in Steam and it works unless it's protected by some kind of anti-cheat program. I think the anti-cheat solution will be found in the next maybe 2 or 3 years. I think there's gonna be a solution to this pretty soon, and that will open up the way for more and more games. We've got Steam, we've got the Heroic launcher for Epic Games, Origin and Uplay work as well on Linux, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made an open source client that worked with Proton as well. I think the future of Linux gaming is super bright, and I think it's probably going to be a completely viable platform in the next 3 or 4 years, tops. Now in terms of manufacturer, I don't really know. I feel both manufacturers support Linux in a different way. Nvidia is always ready on day one with their new launches, with their proprietary drivers, but they are proprietary drivers. They are not good at supporting Wayland yet, even though they are putting some efforts towards that. It's really improving rapidly. And yet, they don't open source the specs for their cards, they don't open source anything, they don't send cards to driver developers. So basically, the open source drivers are gonna stay bad as long as Nvidia doesn't start open sourcing more stuff. On the other hand, we have AMD with great open source drivers, but a terrible politic about launching their cards, which is none of the driver developers have the cards in their hands when they launch. They haven't had them, they can't develop drivers, and basically it means that 3, 4, or 5 months after a launch, a card is still not correctly supported under Linux. That's bad. So basically both manufacturers have their issues right now. There isn't one that is better than the other. Honestly, the only one that is really good is Intel, even though those are not really graphics cards. But Intel is the only one that has drivers ready on launch day, every day, and open source. So yeah, I don't really know. My preference goes with Nvidia for now, but we'll see. So, other questions? Was Linux your first? I'm expecting this to mean what was my first Linux distro, and that was Ubuntu 6.06 and then 6.10. It's the first distribution I used, like I said in the previous question. If was Linux your first, like my first operating system, it wasn't. My first operating system was actually a very old version of Mac OS that my father had on the laptop that his work gave him, and which I used to play when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. I used to play something called Playroom, which was a fun kids game with various rooms and various games you could play. But the first real OS I ever used on a computer was Windows 98. That was my first OS. Where do you live? I already answered that. What are the regular open source softwares you use? I already have answered that. And how many hairs do you have on your head? I don't know, but they're falling off. I don't know how many I have, but yeah, temples and at the back there, yeah, I'm gonna be bald in like 5 or 6 years, probably. It's gonna happen. That's the way of life. Now, another very interesting question is, if you could no longer use any form of desktop Linux, what would you turn to? That's a good question. Not BSD, because there's no software support for that. Probably something the likes of Mac OS, honestly, because I mean, Windows 10 is not a terrible OS anymore. It looks coherent more and more, it's usable, it's still Windows, so it's still riddled with viruses and weird telemetry and spyware stuff, and I think Apple is doing a better job of that than Microsoft. But honestly, yeah, I would still use something based loosely off of Unix, which is Mac OS. The only issue is you have to buy a Mac for that, but Macs are not a terrible value proposition with the new Apple Silicon now. When they were Intel Macs, they were underpowered, undercooled, and they were just bad choices. For desktops or for laptops, they were overpriced. Now with the power, the performance, and the battery life that they have on Apple Silicon, Macs are not a terrible choice. So if Linux disappeared completely, I would probably use Mac OS and try to use as many open source apps on it that I could. That would probably be the solution. Maybe I would try BSD for a while, but yeah, the situation doesn't look good there. Not at all. Another question. If you like Elementary OS so much, do you contribute writing code for it? If so, will you take part in Elementary Developer Week this summer? Did you ever thought about switching from Elementary to another distro? I don't contribute code because I'm not a developer. I don't know how to write code. I can read HTML, PHP, JavaScript, CSS, some Node, stuff like that. I can read code, I can understand basically how it's working, what it's doing, but I can't write it. I'm not a developer. I work in the IT field, but I'm a product owner, so I don't know how to code. So I have never contributed code. I default to contributing some money through Patreon, but yeah, I can't write code. So I'm probably not going to participate as in doing a talk for Elementary Developer Weekend because I'm not a developer and I don't think I could contribute anything really that interesting to people. And I think these guys already have a pretty good grasp of user experience and how things work, which is probably the field where I could be the most helpful. But since they already have a good grasp on that, I don't think I could teach them anything. So yeah, I'm going to watch the conferences, but I'm not going to apply for a talk. And if I had to switch from Elementary OS, I would probably use Manjaro KE, which is what I'm doing right now, because, well, Manjaro is easy to set up, it has recent stuff, the AUR is pretty amazing, and, well, KDE is just because I wanted to try something new. But yeah, if Elementary OS just didn't exist and you forced me to switch to something, I would probably go with Fedora with Pantheon, because I don't really like Fedora's base and RPMs and DNF as a package manager, but Pantheon is just my favorite desktop environment, so that's probably what I would use, Fedora with Pantheon. Another question is, what do you like about being a YouTuber? I don't even know if I would define myself as a YouTuber, because I'm not even doing this full time. It's a hobby, like a successful hobby, I guess, moderately successful, but I still have a day job. I work from 8 to 5, yes, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. As a product owner. It's my day job. I only took like half a day on Fridays to work on the channel, and I work on the channel Fridays, Saturdays, and sometimes during the week when I have a video planned for the middle of the week, like the news videos. So it's not really, I'm not living that YouTuber life where I wake up the hour I want, I start working on the videos that I want, I have a small calendar of videos that I need to publish, I have to organize myself really well, and yeah, I don't really make my own hours, and I have to work on the weekends to publish those videos. So I don't know if I'd call myself a YouTuber, but what I like about making YouTube videos is, well, the process of making them, because I love recording, editing, writing scripts, trying to bring like something maybe more laser focused than just a general ramble. I like to identify the key points that I want to talk about and just be concise and be precise about those. That's the thing I try to do, and that's the thing I like. I like recording myself, and I really like editing videos because it's quite fun. And I wish I had more time to experiment a little bit more on various formats, on various effects, transitions, maybe create my own titles, maybe try to make more dynamic videos about stuff. But since I don't live that YouTuber life and I'm not full-time, I can't really do that. I don't really have the time. So what I like, well, the whole process of it, and I also like having discussions and exchanges with you guys, because basically reading the comments and answering the comments is getting trickier and trickier because the channel is growing, there's more and more comments on each video. I can't really reply to everything, but I try to at least read everything and answer to the ones that ask me a question directly. It's tough, but it's interesting, and the Discord server is also pretty cool because you can talk with people that are not just fanboying about your videos. They like to talk about Linux, they like to talk about stuff, they have different opinions from you, and it's really eye-opening, it's open-minded, and it's really fun. So yeah, I guess I like making stuff, putting it out there, and having discussions about it. That's the gist of it. And another question is, what is Nick's favorite ice cream flavor? It's hazelnut. I discovered it when going on holidays in Italy, and hazelnut ice cream is just, like, it's the best. There is no competition. It's just delicious. Another question, when you buy new hardware, how do you deal with Elementary OS's older kernels? When I buy new hardware, I usually install Elementary OS, but the last time I bought new hardware, it was this Slimbook desktop, and I installed Elementary OS 6 on it first, which means that it has Ubuntu 20.04's kernel, which means it's no issue, it supports everything. So I never really had any issue with Elementary OS's older kernel, because the new hardware I bought was, when I was using Elementary OS 5.1, the new hardware I bought was a new graphics card, and this has nothing to do with the kernel. You can just use the proprietary NVIDIA drivers or the AMD Mesa drivers, and you can add PPAs for that. So the kernel doesn't really play a role in this. And so yeah, I guess I never really had an issue with that. If I had tried to install 5.1 Hera on this Slimbook desktop, probably there would have been issues, because yeah, the kernel is a bit old. But you could always add a PPA to get a more recent kernel if you also wanted that. You could use a Ubuntu kernel update utility, UKUU, yeah, that's how you pronounce it, UKUU. You could use that to install newer kernels that are made for Ubuntu, so they are going to work on Elementary OS as well. So basically, if you can get a bootable system and you think that some hardware is not recognized, use UKUU and install a more recent kernel. You might have some issues, but generally it will work well. And that's it for the questions I received, so that also completes this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't hesitate to like or dislike if you didn't like any of my answers. And you can also subscribe if you're not already, you can turn on notifications, but I'm probably sure that this video will only speak to people that are already subscribed. And well, as always, thank you very much for helping this channel grow. We're at 100,000 subscribers now. It's been 3 years and 1 month since we started the channel, and yeah, it's been an amazing ride. I have no intention of stopping, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being there, and I guess you'll see me in the next one very soon. Bye!